Good afternoon, Mr. Cole. How you doing?
Afternoon, Ross. How are you? All right?
I'm good, sir. I'm good.
Well
I'm
done.
good. I've got a jacket on because I'm starting to feel the winter chill.
You remind me a little bit of Peter Green there now.
Peter Green.
Yeah, a little bit with the jacket and then the hat. Yeah, a little bit like Peter Green there.
Oh.
Fair play.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? You know, I mean, he's a tremendous guitarist and writer, and sadly not with us anymore.
Well, you remind me of a young Hugh Grant.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll pop out to the toilet now.
Yes, do that. So, so a few big milestones over the last couple of weeks for both of us. I released Beacons.
Yes.
To critical acclaim, I'm sure. But yeah, I've had some lovely feedback on that book. People seem to be enjoying it, which is all you can ask, really. And you have hit a very significant milestone in your writing.
Yes, well, I completed my 500th poem. So I was quite pleased with that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I know it's the 500th is because when I wrote the first one, which was just a one-off again, somebody told me you got to copyright it, and I said, "What for?" You know, like you do, you know, in case anybody steals it. And I think, who's gonna steal a poem? But they say, you'll be surprised. So every poem I do now, I obviously put on the bottom my name, the year it's written, and all copyright number 1 or number 2. So I was on 499, which is very significant number as well, because that was my force number when I was in the police, 499.
Right.
So like I finished 499, which was I think John Denver, and I thought, oh, 500 next, and then I trawled with the group to see who they'd like for the 500th, and there were numerous names. Obviously, somebody wanted one about the Romans. Tom Jones done that. Freddie done him, and somebody mentioned this Battle of Ammanford, which I thought was a battle, basically a Roman battle or something like that years ago. But obviously it wasn't. It was in relation to coal mining. So I jotted them all down. I thought, well, I'm going to do that one. I'll have a read of it and see what it's all about, because I'd never heard of it. All the writing I've done about mining, which is mostly disasters, obviously. I hadn't come across this Battle of Ammanford, which precursored the Great Strike of, I think it's 1926.
Right.
And I read into it, and quite frightening, really. 10 days of fracas and 6'4" policemen beating hell out of people, especially the miners, mostly, obviously. Then they ambushed them, etc., etc. So I thought I'd do that one, and that's the one I did, which was the 500th, the Battle of Ammanford.
So, what does it feel like to have been someone that's written 500 poems?
Well, it's strange, really, because as you know, Ross, we've discussed it on many, many occasions. I think you got to look back sort of retrospectively how this sort of body of work has developed over the years, and how writing develops over the years. You know yourself. You know, you start off. Well, I certainly started very late, and I didn't really know what I was writing. Truth be told, I just had these thoughts in my head. Aberfan, I knew all about Aberfan, and once I get the first line, it just develops from there. But when I wrote it, I had no visualization that like 4 years down the line, I'd be like written 500 poems and 3 books, etc., etc. That never crossed my mind at all. So yes, it's very nice to write all these poems and for people to like them. As you know, I mean, they're not everybody's cup of tea, but I suppose that's the arts, you know. Like we discussed earlier on about Bruce Springsteen. I'm not, you know, when I say I'm not a big lover of Bruce Springsteen, you know, there are records which obviously hit home to you, but I suppose I've never listened to him. It's like poetry, you know what I mean? I've read Wilfred Owen, Sassoon, so that's influenced me with the war poetry. But no, I don't feel any different. It just spurs me on to write the next one. Like when you mentioned Bruce Springsteen, I think, yeah, I'll write a poem about Bruce Springsteen. And as you know, I try to give the clues when I'm writing them to the group, which I think sort of gives them a little bit of sort of, I know he is, and some of the, as you know, some of the replies that come back are off the wall.
I think the reason I kind of love that in your group on Facebook, and if you're not in Arthur's group, please join it, is I kind of see the irony to it, in that you put out these teasers, you know, these first verses, and see if you can guess who it is. And to me, it always makes me kind of chuckle a bit, because it's a former detective trying to get his followers to play detective.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's like, can you solve the case of this?
Yeah, you got it. And with individuals, as you know, like everybody loves music, don't they?
Yes.
There's nobody, you know, it's not like poetry. You know, we mention poetry, some people, oh, I hate poetry. But you mention music, and everybody's different. Like you with Mike Peters. I like country and western. I like all music. I like classical music. You know what I mean? I can listen to it. But you when I give them the first verse, it's very rare that, because of the wording I use, you know, because when I sort of research like Bruce Springsteen, and you listen to what people have written about him, this type of thing, and the words they use. And then you get those amalgam of words, and you just sort of chuck it in the mix, and then you get the first line, and then it all runs. So when some people read the first 3 or 4 lines, they go, who is he talking about? Because they've never researched him, but they love his music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
I've seen some very off-the-wall guessing as to some of your poems. Actually, some has been pretty hilarious.
Well, of course it is. You know what I mean? And then what I hope what people do then, like, they will go on to, like you've gone and look at Bruce Springsteen and look at the narrative, and it's massive, and his body of work is in there. You know, I didn't realize that Bruce Springsteen had written so many songs. Like when his earlier albums, like, you know, they bombed, like, you know what I mean? That type of thing. And his childhood, you know, the business with his, he's a loner. You know, he's a bit of a loner. He's a bit off the wall. He had that motorbike accident. He had concussion, severe concussion, and obviously that left a mark, obviously, because I think it affected his behaviour by the sound of it, which it was a brain injury, obviously. And then he missed the draft, not through any fault of his own, because he went there and they said, no, you can't have you because your behaviour or whatever. But then he channels it then into his music, because he had a guitar or whatever, and fights for the working man.
Yes.
You know, very political.
Yeah.
Likes honesty, likes integrity. So you know, you try to get that into the poem, so that when people do read it, you know, it's not so much the music, which comes there as well, because you can put the titles of his songs in the poem. You know, he's dancing in the dark, or you know, blah blah blah. He had us dancing in the dark, and people, oh, I remember that, like dancing in the dark, and that type of thing. Philadelphia, you can whack Philadelphia in it somewhere, and people automatically think of Tom Hanks. You know, it's like a light bulb coming on, isn't it? And I like to think that when people they go back on after they've read it and guess who it is, because a lot of them are guessing after the answer's already there. See, because Jimmy Greenall, my mate, I put it on yesterday. I put the first verse on yesterday, and then I clicked and it disappeared. And not long after, Jimmy Greenall, my mate, says, "Where's that poem?" Where's that verse? I want to guess who it is. Like, so I got to put it back on. Like, and but in the meantime, one of the girls had already guessed it.
Yeah.
Because I deleted the verse, everything was deleted. So she come back after and said, "Well, I had him first." So it's a bit of humour. It's a bit of, you know, it's nice. It's a bit of sort of, which I enjoy. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, I mean, poetry can have such a bad reputation for being such a snobby thing that it's really good when you can have fun with it.
Of course it is.
You know.
You know, I like to think that some people read like the first verse of Springsteen. There's some words in there like that I don't understand. I don't even know what they are. I've written them, but I don't know what they mean. So I can see people this afternoon reading it and going like this on their phone. Fucking hell, is that what that means? But it relates to him then, doesn't it? You know, it relates to him.
Yeah, he's I mean, I watched the I think it's on Netflix actually. It's the Springsteen on Broadway show, which is basically him unplugged. But what he does is he talks you through the story of his life, through his songs. And there's some amazing stories on it. Amazing stories. There's one of my favorites is that at one point they got to that make or break point, and this guy booked them a show and said, if you make it this show, you're going to make it. If you can't make this show, then you know you're not going to get famous in Jersey. And they had to go all the way across the country, and they had to drive. So they put all the equipment into 2 vans, and Bruce and the drummer were in one van, and the other guys were in the other van, and they agreed to share the driving. And the drummer drove for a long time, and then he said, "Right, boss," he said, "we got to swap around." And Springsteen said, "I can't." He said, "I've never learned to drive." So they were teaching him how to drive as they were going across. And
on the job.
Yeah, and he could only work the first 2 gears. And if you had to stop at a traffic light, you always stalled. You'd have to get out. The drummer would get in, start the van again. And it's a brilliant story.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's and you look at all the history of these singers. You know, Glenn Campbell, John Denver, and stuff. You know, you look at when they started. You know what I mean. It wasn't instant success for them.
No.
They were driven. They had this passion, this driving passion for music, and you know that they made it. But when you think of, yeah, they've made it, what's happened prior to that? You know, it's quite frightening in some cases. You know what I mean? It's how they got there. You know, you take the Rolling Stones and people like that, or half of them are alive. I have no idea what they've been through. Like, you know what I mean? And it's incredible, it is. But I think out of all the arts, I think music is the one that sort of covers everybody.
It's the universal one, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, that and the cinema, you know what I mean, and the telly. Forget the telly, because I think it's gone, the telly. But certainly, music and the cinema, and they go together again, as you know. They you know.
Well, I mean, some of the best music I've heard is movie soundtracks. You know, like John Williams and John Barry, and you know, like John Barry's score to Dances with Wolves, I think is some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. Same with John Williams with Superman and E.T. and Jaws. You know, Jaws would be a very different film without that piece of music.
I love listening to film music. You know, even when you watch Netflix and stuff, and a song comes on, you know, and I say to Canny, I say, who's singing that? And you're on the phone like, God, I didn't notice it. Like Buffy St. Marie and people like that, Soldier Blue and stuff like that. You know what I mean? The Big Country. My neighbour in my stake, like in the summer, he'd open all the windows and he'd have the Big Country music blasting. You know, you could hear it up the street. Like, he loved it, booming out. So I think the music. I think it's a blanket music. I think anybody who says they don't like music I don't think they're telling the truth, to be honest with you.
Well, Mike Peters stepped into Big Country for a while.
Yeah.
When they lost their original singer, Mike stepped in.
That's right.
Yeah, he did a lot of work with them.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think Queen are on tour now, when they've got some fella singing now.
Adam Lambert.
What's his name?
Adam Lambert.
Yeah, well, he's very similar to Freddie Mercury.
Yeah,
I think out of the one, I think out of the one, they've had a couple, I think, sort of front them, but I think he's about the closest.
Yeah,
You'll never replace Freddie Mercury, obviously, because I wrote a poem about Freddie Mercury. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah,
unbelievable entertainer. Oh, probably the best ever.
Well, are you going to give us a poem? Are you going to give us your 500th, or are you going to give us Springsteen? What are you going to give us?
I'll give you the 500.
Go on, give us number 500.
No, I haven't finished Springsteen. I've had so many interruptions today that normally I do them in about half an hour, but I've had the phone ringing and the postman knocking. I'll give you Aberfan, the first one.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the first one I ever wrote.
Okay.
And again, that's out of the blue. I'm on a lot of coal mining sites, and because, as you know, my family were colliers, and there was a poem on there, and I read it, and I thought to myself, I can write a poem, because I enjoyed literature in school. And I wrote this one. It didn't take me long to write, but as you know, when you write a first poem, you know, you got to read it a couple of times, like, before you think, oh yeah, that's right. So this is the first one I wrote. It's called, obviously, Aberfan, which on the 21st, which is next week, is the anniversary, 1966, which is, how many years is that? 54 years.
Long time now.
Okay, Aberfan. Slag and slurry, the devil incarnate, robbed a village of lives and didn't abate. On that early morn, the sun fell from the sky. A giant black shadow drowned their small cries. Teachers and children fighting for air, slag and the slurry laid the school bare, completely covered by the river of black. Many souls lost, if we could only go back. The village would come with all haste and speed, digging with hands, miners taking the lead. Mothers wailing, where is my child? The black stuff still sliding, a torrent so vile. The number it took was 144. If only God had allowed a few hours more. Half term it would be later that day. Souls that we lost would have been on their way. The survivors, they numbered 145, sad and heartbroken, however alive. God bless you all, please rest in peace. Never forgotten, our love will not cease. So that was the first one I wrote. So, you know, that started me off, basically. Then obviously I'm on World War I sites, and you know, it's like a snowball. You know, you write one and another one comes along and whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and then subjects will crop up on the telly or whatever, and I just think, like Ozzy Osbourne's on the telly here at the minute. Like, you could write a book about him, really, couldn't you? But I could write one about Ozzy, couldn't I?
I think you should. The Prince of Darkness, I think.
Yeah, that would come into it. You know, the description of him. You know, this type of thing, and when he was peeing against the wall of the Alamo.
Yeah.
That type of thing, and when his wife locked him up, and he escaped dressed in her clothes. You know, it's you could go on and on and on and on with him, but yeah, characters. But yeah, that's the first one, and it's just developed from there. It has, Ross. It's like you know, with Beacons and your other poetry books. You get inspired, don't you? You get inspired by landscapes and that type, the nuance of the landscapes and the lochs and the mountains and that type of thing.
Yeah, it's Beacons was interesting for me. I mean, there is some there's a fair bit of landscape stuff in there, but for me, I wanted to write a poem about writing poetry. And I wanted to explain that, we've talked before how we have a very different creative approach. And I can't do what you do. I can't sit there and write. I have to have these ideas. They have to come to me. And I wanted to kind of write that down, that idea that, to me, the daytime now is actually quite a barren time. Nothing really happens to me in the day. And if I want to write, sometimes I can't wait for the nighttime, because sometimes when I'm falling asleep, or I'll wake up in the night with an idea, and there's so much more creative comfort to the nighttime for me. The flip side of that, of course, is that the ideas themselves can sometimes feel quite intrusive, right? Because you just kind of, like, you work all day, you want your brain to switch off, and sometimes my brain won't do that. So in Beacons, I wrote a poem called Trespasser, for another police connection. And the poem is about that exact feeling of, that, to me, if I wanted to be in that constant creative state, then I would need an eternity of night times, because the daytime doesn't do it for me at all.
No.
So when I wrote Trespasser, which I'll read, actually.
Yeah.
That was me trying to explain that, nothing good happens in the light, in my opinion. I don't know, but that's kind of how I got to it. But yeah, I'll read it. This is Trespasser. And the trespasser, of course, as I said, is the sun, really. Right, Trespasser. Another unwanted punctuation. The light returns like a bothersome nub, breathing in at dawn's hip to cast out serenity. It's not like the after hours. The rich sharpness of the dark is peeled away. The days never shine for me, or will me to paint them. The bright obtrude is an uninvited guest, with a lambent lustrous reach, and has carved away my night's womb in arrogant return. I'll count away your hours, the metered fly speck of you that shuts out my brooding ponder. Nothing will be built now until night rises and the air is glut with thought again. So yeah, that's how that's kind of how I feel about that sort of writing process, in that, there's something about that nighttime, that darkness, that gets me going.
Yeah.
That's
and I think with your poetry as well, you're an ideal poet for, like, sort of prior to you reading your poem, you give, like, the audience a little taste of why you don't write in the day, and then when they listen to the poem, I think then they get drawn into it, and they then possibly dissect it a little bit more than if they just read it. Do you understand me? My poetry is a little bit different. It's authentic. It's a story. So people can get into it pretty quick, like, think, oh, I know, because the subjects are sort of, yours are personal subjects, aren't they?
Yes.
They're personal to you, aren't they? Well, my poetry, I suppose, it's authentic, so it's not really personal to me. I suppose I could write personal poetry if I wanted to, but I haven't. You know what I mean? So my poetry.
We're still waiting for the love poem. We're still waiting for your love poem.
Well, I might do one. I don't know. But so, and that's the difference between poets. Because if every poet is the same, it'd be so boring, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think with your poetry, that little sort of snippet before opens the door for the people who either read it or listen to it. You know what I mean? Once you read it to them, they can understand where you're coming from with it. I think so, because I can write any time of the. I don't write in the night when I'm sleeping, or I go to bed, and that's the end of it. Like, I get up in the morning, I'll have my breakfast, I open my computer, and I'm either writing the books, or like today, or Springsteen. It all depends what it is, you know what I mean? And then I put that down and I write the book into the books, and I think, well, I'll write a poem now, and I write the poem. So with me, it's from the time I get up, whatever, 8 o'clock, as soon as I have my breakfast, I'll have a shave and shower, and I'm up here, and then I'll write right through the day till I go to bed, perhaps. I don't know. It all depends. All depends what's happening. But certainly with this lockdown, obviously you've got more time in the house.
Yes.
And there's not a lot to do, like.
No.
So
maybe that will be my ultimate review. Maybe when I stop writing, if I stop writing, maybe that would be the tagline I've always sort of yearned for. It'll be Ross Lane, author. He wrote all his best stuff when he was sleeping.
The nocturnal author.
The nocturnal, yeah. The vampire.
The nocturnal poet.
The nocturnal poet. I like that.
Do you know what I mean? Because people get, once they hear nocturnal, I think, well, you're like an owl, is he, or what? Well, you are. You know what I mean? That's the end of it. No,
I like that. The nocturnal poet. I like that.
Yeah, I think write it down. I may even write a poem about it.
Go on, then.
The nocturnal poet.
I'll leave it in your hands.
But even with that, like you know, the seed is there, isn't it? You know, because you've told me now how you feel, how you're inspired, etc. It's the same. So if you were on that Wikipedia, you know, Ross Lane, and somebody said, well, write a poem about Ross Lane, I just go into it and I read it. I read when you were born, quotes that you got, and I write happy days, and then I start, and I'll end up with the 4 or 5 verses, which basically is you in 5 verses or 4 verses, whatever it is. The nocturnal poet.
Do 5 because I put a bit of weight on through the lockdown.
The nocturnal poet. You mean it's and that's the way I see it. You know, ideas. You know that and that's where you get inspired from. Now, when Mary Cecil, I've never met Mary from Rathlin Island. When I wrote the poem about Rathlin Island for her, and she described me as an authentic poet. She's a poet. She was beautiful poetry. But the sea and the cliffs, and it's unbelievable. She said, "You're an authentic poet, Arthur." And I said, "What is that?" You know, I knew it was authentic, but you know, what is it in relation to poetry? And she basically said, "You tell it as it is.
Yeah,
it's authentic. It's tangible. It's people who read it can sort of identify with it."
Yeah, it's incredibly accessible. Yes,
and I think we've lost that with poetry, and I think you go back years and years. You know, I don't listen to a lot of modern poetry, but I think one of the ones when I wrote Glacian, the disaster in Glacian, and one of the boy who survived got in touch with me, and I gave him the poem. And he tells me, have you listened to the Poet Laureate's poem about Glacian? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, you haven't listened to it. And I did, I listened to it. And I couldn't understand it. And he says to me, as soon as I read yours, I'm there, I'm back there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's what puts a lot of people off poetry. I don't think they can get a grips with it. The language used is different. The language that you use is but some of the language in modern poetry, like I think it just sort of bamboozles people. I think that's the word I'm using, bamboozle.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people don't like a lot of poetry, to be honest with you.
Well, you read your first poem.
Yeah.
So I'll read for you one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Which is the second poem that I wrote.
In Beacons?
No, this is of all time. Of all time. And it's about a castle in Scotland called Castle Cheerham. It's a little castle on a causeway. on the west coast there. Beautiful, little, ruined, falling down now. But in the day when the loch's tidal, so it goes out and there's a causeway you can walk out to it. And I stood there and I was looking at it and I thought, what an amazing place to be a child. And so I started imagining myself there as a child running and playing around this castle. And when I wrote Glenfinnan, I was very proud of Glenfinnan. And I thought Glenfinnan was the first good poem that I'd written. But when I wrote Castle Cheerham, this poem, I actually felt like I'd written a real poem. So yeah, let me just give you a read of this. So this is Castle Cheerham. As a child, I ran to touch its tired walls and heather dress, to be within its body while the stone circle rose about me, an empty bezel resting on a purple shroud. I looked out where Loch met sea, joined in shades of blue, the silky ring that lapped its sides, leaving and returning, caressing ancient walls. I remember dragging sticks that chipped its faded skin and running on the sandy tail that we used to reach the shore before the water came to take it and bury it deep within itself. And when the sky changed colour, we watched the sun cast stones to crimson, nature etching Cheerham on the sky and loch as the waters isolated her once more, framed by the black lid of night and the ocean's grip around its sides.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's very descriptive, isn't it? You know what I mean? I can see that with the picture of the castle.
Mm.
You know what I mean? A nice picture of the loch, the castle, the sand, the sort of growth around the castle over the years, the green, or the colours, and then you listen to your poem, and I can imagine you in a pub nearby, with like 40 or 50 of the local villagers, and then you pull out your book, and you, excuse me, I got a poem for you, and they go, oh, what's it about? It's about the castle, and you read it to them.
Yeah.
And they probably go like this. Oh, that's it, see? Oh, he's spot on, like. So I think that's the way poetry can get people. It can drag you in, you know what I mean? There's no doubt about that, but that's lovely, you know what I mean? And so how many have you written, Ross?
I don't think I'll ever get to your level.
Again, you know what I mean? I didn't.
That's a lot.
I had no idea about this this battle, and I just go through the sort of precursor for it. It's the Battle of Ammanford, and it was a precursor for the Great Strike of 1926.
Okay.
At the time, mines were privately owned, and as a result of the Great War, cheap German coal was imported, which basically knocked the bottom out of the coal industry. Profits dwindled, and miners were laid off on the premise of last in, first out.
Yeah.
So they went on strike down there. They were martyrs, and we mustn't forget what they fought for. So I researched it. Somebody said about it. I thought, well, I'll make it. The first one was a mining poem, so this is the 500th. It's called the Battle of Ammanford. Ammanford, a village whose heartbeat was coal. Her brave men they buried with body and soul. By government decree, many livelihoods lost. Her coal mines forsaken at such a terrible cost. Miles deep underground, anthracite mined, a first-class product of worldwide renown. A story there is that's now lost in the annals of a coal mining revolt that ended in battle. Mines privately owned, colliers downtrodden, driven by profit, sacking quite common. Last in, first out was the ultimate adage, compassion not shown, it was brutally savage. With economic hardship, an inevitable strike, of which Ammanford had never seen the likes. Police drafted in, there were 200 in total. Many brutal confrontations would sadly follow. It was at Pont Amman Bridge the battle began. Coppers were ambushed, miners fought to a man. Subdued after hours, then an honourable retreat. Many were arrested, though never admitted defeat. Skirmishes there were plenty, acts of retaliation. Mine owners' actions, tyrannic depredation. Subsequent court hearings, the red flag they sang, solidarity supreme, a proud community as one. This was a precursor for the general strike, as unions rebelled, fighting for workers' rights. The Ammanford battle we should never forget, so forever be proud, you're all in their debt. Now, I'd never heard of it, but obviously I can imagine what it was like there, because at the time I think every police officer in the counties was over 6 foot. A lot of them had just sort of fought in the First World War and stuff. They were probably 6 foot plus, 200 of them, and I don't think any mercy would have been shown, especially if they were ambushed. So I would think it would be quite brutal. Many were imprisoned. I think 2-year stretches then, which is, you had 2 years you did then. Yeah, so that was the 500th, and you know what I mean.
Well, it's a great pair of bookends for the piece of work, isn't it? Aberfan, it frames that sort of body work, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then in between you've got certainly a lot of disasters, Sengennydd, Park Slip. Then you've got the hardship of Victorian mining with the families, the mother, the father, the children underground, chained to the wall and that type of stuff. Certainly with the mining and the First World War is the same. It's we should never forget our mining industry is gone now. Obviously, it'll never return. I don't think it will.
No.
But we must never forget what it brought with it. With the solidarity and my father was a collier. You cut him in half like he's labour through and through. Like, whether today I think it's a little bit different.
Well, I think the Labour Party then of that time, which I think in Wales we tend to reminisce and kind of romanticize a little bit, because that's not the Labour Party of today.
Of course not.
Because that working class man that they represented back then, that's not kind of what exists today.
No, you know what I mean, and I think money comes into it as well. Like, my mother never worked. She worked in the arsenal when the war was on, obviously. But after, when she married my father and she had Billy, she never worked again. My mother, she was a stay-at-home mother. She had 6 children. My father was a collier, 1 wage. The house was rented, no repairs being done. But we were always fed. We were loved. Our money was poor. And then I look at today's generations. This Ratchford bloke now on about free meals for kids in schools, etc., etc., etc. And I think, yeah, that was happening in the 50s as well, mind you. Free meals in school, but it was free meals in school for poor families. No, you can't have that across the board today. You mean? And I'm all for today, sort of single parent families, a woman perhaps who's got 2 or 3 children on her own, working, kids in school. Yeah, help them, but not across the board, because there's so much money about now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed so much. I mean, you talk then about like the workers, the miners, you know, the factory workers, the labor people. You know, he said, cut your father in half. My grandfather would have been exactly the same.
Yeah.
But you know, the Labour Party now, you know, I mean, maybe it's because the unions are gone. I don't know. I mean, they're more the party of sort of trust fund liberal Guardian readers now than of actually working class people. So
yeah,
if that working class even exists anymore the way it did then, I don't think it does. But you know, all that's changed so much. But I think what's important, and why I think your writing especially is important, is because that authenticity that you bring, those factual events that you have written about so brilliantly, you know, they exist as a memoir of the past. You know, it's the same as I feel about, you know, statues and things like that. That, you know, sometimes they remember horrible things, you know, and sometimes they are, you know, reminders that awful things have happened in the past. But it's important to be reminding of them to make sure it doesn't happen again. So yeah, so that's why I think that's great. But you know, like I said, I think it's a great little poem, mate. I don't think you've lost a step from number 1, and I look forward to hearing number 1000.
Well, I'll try to do one by the weekend for you now.
You'll be up to 1000 by the weekend, no problem at all. The way you write.
But it's no, it's the world has changed, not for the better, I don't think. You know what I mean? It's all money driven now. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have money, but I look back at my childhood, and honestly, even now I look back at my mother and my father. You know, I think, how did you manage? How have you managed? You know, you've got kids now, 11 and 12, with laptops, doing TikTok, you know, this type of thing. You know what I mean? And you know, their laptop is worth like £800. Their phones are worth £800, and I think to myself, cool, what my mother could have done with 800 quid in the 50s.
It's a very different world now, isn't it?
Oh, it's totally just digital. You know, everything is on tap. You know what I mean?
But we go back to those musicians you talked about earlier. You know, like your Chuck Berrys and your Buddy Hollys and all this, and you know, the marketing opportunities for them was the radio, right? They did concerts, they were on the radio if they were lucky, right? Yeah. They didn't have YouTube and all this technology to guarantee them some sort of marketing and promotion. They had to work to sell those records. You know, Springsteen is another example, right?
Yeah.
Well, that story where the guy said to him, "You will not get famous in New Jersey."
No.
But then he did what he did, which then made it easier for Bon Jovi was the one that came after him, right? So he made it easier then for John Bon Jovi and his band because Springsteen already put New Jersey on the map then. Sure. So yeah, so there was so much work involved. And
he influenced, like the Beatles influenced Springsteen, you know what I mean? There's no doubt about that. The Fab Four, they influenced him. And they all start off with a guitar, don't they? You know, his mother bought him a guitar, or his grandfather bought him a guitar. And you look at them all over the years, you know, and everything is manufactured now, isn't it?
Mm.
You look at listen to some of the music, like the Beatles live years ago, you know, when they started, you cringe a little bit. You go, oh,
Hamburg sort of tapes.
You go like this, but then they go in the studio with George Martin and blah, and got all the gear there, and they cut it, they splice it, they do this, they do that, and you think, good God, is that the same? You know?
I told you about my father, didn't I? My father went to Cardiff to see Roy Orbison. And when they asked him about he said, what was the support band like? And he said they were rubbish. He said they won't amount to anything. And it was the Beatles.
So yeah, you mean it's and then how it's progressed. The music has progressed over the years, you know what I mean? And like I say, at the time in the 50s, it was radio, wasn't it? You would all sit around the radio on a Sunday night, like in the house, and sing something simple. That was my father's favourite, and we all had to listen to him, you know, Sunday night, like. And he would come like, sing something simple for you and I, and we'd be there like the five, and we'd be like this. Oh, it's nice, Dad. You know, yeah, lovely, Dad.
Oh, lovely, Dad, lovely. Play it again, Sam.
I play it again, Sam. But no, it's like you say, and the other thing about what we write in these books, like these books are you forever, aren't they? You know what I mean? They'll be on a shelf somewhere, and who knows, they may be used in schools in years to come. I don't know.
Who knows?
Like we've got a grandson, as you know, Chris's little boy now, he's 6 weeks old. I have, I'd like to think like when he's 18 or 19 and he got his books on and he says to Chris, what are those books there, Dad? Oh, your grandfather wrote them. What are they about? And he said, well, have a read one. And he'll read it like I think, he wrote that, did he? Good God, and he must have been clever. Because that type of thing, that's the way you are, isn't it? You know what I mean?
But we are, and also now, I mean, which I think is quite interesting, is also now we have these podcasts.
Oh yeah.
So he can read your book, but actually now he can actually hear you talking about.
Exactly. That's like Chris was going to say to him, oh no, I put him on you now.
Yeah.
Eddie Isler. Oh, is that him? Is it? Dude, he looks like you, Dad. Yeah. Where's his hair, Dad? Where's his hair go? You know what I mean?
He edited it out, yeah.
Yeah, I never met my my father's grandmother, my grandmother on my father's, or my grandfather. And I can barely remember my grandfather on my mother's side. My grandmother, I remember her very well. So, and I've got nothing tangible then with them.
Yeah.
Whereas today, like you say, these things, it's there, isn't it? It's in the moment now. They play it back, and they probably enjoy them.
Yeah, hopefully.
But
or they'll be going, I'm not sure what they're talking about.
And the other thing, like you're saying with these podcasts, do they inspire people to write? Because as you know, people say, I'd love to write something, see. And like I say, yeah, well, if I can do it at 66 years of age, I'm sure you can do it at 35.
Yeah.
There's no barrier to age is no barrier.
If you want to write.
Yeah.
Give it a go, because you won't know otherwise.
No, you know what I mean? And don't be afraid when you write something. Say, for example, write a poem, 4 verses, and you read it, and it's rubbish, it is. Because a lot of people have been in touch with me, like Sean Edwards. I said to Sean a couple of years ago, I said, Sean, do a page, do a group with your poetry, put it on there, get it out there. And that's what he did, and he told me, I never thought of doing that. I said, well, yeah, put it out there, because people have got to listen to it. And if it can inspire people, so be it. And I think a lady got into it. She said, I've done what you said. I've set up a page. I said, well, no, make it a group, not a page. Make it a group where people can comment, put their comments on there or whatever, and keep it open, keep it public, so that it gets out there. I mean, we got people, and Australia, Canada, North America. It's unbelievable. I did. What one did I do the other way in Idaho? The cherry tree disaster. Right. So I send it over to. I joined the group first, and then I just send the poem. And I come off it then. I just give them the poem. Otherwise, they can't get it because it's a closed group or whatever. So I just send it over. But then they friend you up, then, don't they? Whoever's in charge, they friend you up, so you're always there. And if they came back tomorrow and said, "Oh, can you write a poem about this?" I said, "Yeah, what is it?" I'll write and send it. That type of thing. Yes. It's an amalgam of. It's global. Absolutely, it's global nowadays. You can write something here today and go ping, and it's in Australia in 10 seconds or whatever.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Amazing stuff.
Brilliant.
Amazing stuff. Right. Well, I thought we'd end this one with a poem to commemorate your 500th. And what I thought I'd do is I'll read the one and only time I've ever been authentic. And this is a poem I wrote called "The Poet of Caira."
Oh yes.
So yes. Let's see if I can be authentic. So this is "The Poet of Caira." See everybody, see if you can guess who this is about. There is a poet who's cut from deep Caira's stone. His thoughts and his life and his words are his own. Bred, raised and taught in the sweet southern air, the town runs in his blood, he will always share. A writer emerged from that now still Llinvi Valley to share out his tales and memories as poetry. But this one Caira son, so stoic and proud, who bound into life with a drive firm and loud, a detective who stood on that great thin blue line, protecting the innocent, fighting back crime. Then he picked up a pen one late quiet evening to share with us all his writings and meaning. He writes tales of intrigue and mystery prose, and poems and sonnets of the things that he knows. He has harked back through Wales, its bright and dark days, to spotlight its triumphs, its woes, and his ways. His words sometimes tell of events underground, authentic and bright in their feelings and sounds. Some poems shape memories of people we know. The poet creates them to put them on view. The famous and infamous framed in poetic care. So we remember their stories like we were once there. When someone now mentions that old town of Caira, I think of the district and its poet's son they named Arthur.
I know, I was very surprised when you wrote that, Sean. Ross, I call you Sean for something. What's that for? Ross, because I showed it to Carl. I said, you've written a bastard poem, you know. I said, what's going on here? But you're like I say, go back. You know what I mean? Go back 4 years, isn't it? I'm not possessed with writing, but I enjoy it so much, and I see what's developed that I probably will. But I look at life, and I take it day to day, if you understand me. I don't think about tomorrow, or I don't even think what happened yesterday. It's sort of in the moment now. It is because of what's happening. So it's, how can I say, it's I wouldn't call it a drug. It's not a drug. It's a bit of a passion, I suppose. It's like you, as you know what I mean. But you're the nocturnal poet, you are. So I might knock one out for you after.
Yeah, cursed for poetry. I am cursed.
Huh?
It's cursed for poetry.
Yeah, but no, thank you for that. It's and like I say, it's I may have a plaque on the house now. In years to come, who knows?
Right. Well, congratulations on the 500, my friend.
Thank you very much, Ross.
It's been a pleasure talking to you as always.
Oh, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I do enjoy the hours. It's nice, and if people who listen to it, all 5 or 6 of them, enjoy it.
I think they're watch parties. I think there's hundreds crammed in a room.
I know.
Socially distanced. I
know. I can imagine. And as you know, next Friday we've got Russ on.
Yes, special guest.
Do they know about Russ?
I don't know. I mean, I would think it's probably the same audience, but we'll leave him. We'll leave Mr. Charisma to introduce himself.
It's not Russ Conway.
No, it's not. No, it's not even Russ Abbott.
But he's with us next Friday.
Next Friday, we're back.
At what time?
I'm not sure.
We'll sort that out. But you know, I hope he hasn't got that parrot on his shoulder like he normally does.
No.
Huh?
Hopefully he behaves himself this time.
Well, I hope so. And I hope he uses bad language, because I'm dead against it.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well
Look
done.
after yourself. Love to that.
Take care, my friend.